A big CFL day today. Let's please welcome in TSN's David Naylor. And Dave, as we are on the cusp of week 6 of what's been a pretty exciting season, what have been your stories, if you don't mind, that's grabbed your attention the first 5 weeks?
Well, it's been hard to get away from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, given not only how good they've been over the last several seasons, but usually how quickly they are out of the gate. You know, that's often has a lot to do with roster continuity. So to see them at 1-4, I mean, look, them losing 4-5 at any point is a big story. But to come out of the gate at 1-4, hard to get away from that. I gotta go with Cody Fajardo. I mean, Cody Fajardo is playing at a level higher than the level he played at during his Western nominee season of 2019 in Saskatchewan. And, you know, I kind of pair that with Vernon Adams, who, you know, I think those are the two front runners for outstanding players. We get to sort of the quarter pole of the year. And it's just a reminder, right? How many times was Vernon Adams kicked to the curb by a team in the CFL? A few, right? And when I say kicked to the curb, I mean, most recently in Montreal, he lost his starting job and they traded him, you know, to BC for not a whole lot. Cody Fajardo. I mean, I always go back to it. A meaningful game at the end of the 2022 season. Saskatchewan still had a playoff shot. They sat Cody Fajardo down and started Mason Fine. And 2 years later, Mason Fine is not in the league and Cody Fajardo is playing the best football of his life. And you know, those are the things that really kind of jump out at me, you know, just in terms of initial storylines.
Sure. And let's not forget, there's a lot of sins that this Rider regime needs to repent for, but 4-0 under Corey Mace is a good start. That's a hell of a story, too.
It absolutely is. And the only reason I don't throw Saskatchewan into that, you know, top 3 kind of mix is they're 4-0, and it's like a team that the games have been 3 of their games have been so close. And, you know, and I think that's great when you have every team can look at it and say, man, we're 3-2, we could be 5-0, or we're 2-4 and we could be 4-2. That's really the way it is. And I don't want to take any measure of credit away from the way the Roughriders have managed to flip the switch, in the fourth quarter of every one of their games. And the formula has kind of been pretty consistent, you know, stay close and let the defense create opportunities for you in the fourth quarter. And even with what they did with Shea Pedersen last week, I thought the reassuring thing for the Riders was the fact he got better as the game went along. I mean, he was a lot different player in the second half of that game than he certainly was in the first quarter. So yeah, not to ignore Riders 4-0 as a big storyline, because it absolutely is. You know, I think that they're a team that looks like they're going to be competitive in every single game this year, which is certainly more than we could say for the end of last season. But I'm not sure they're going to win the West.
I want your opinion on this, and I know you don't shy away from the tough topics, but I also know how delicate the Chad Kelly situation is. And yesterday, Eddie Steele was on here saying the Argos are bringing him back because they win with him. Kirk, and I'm not specifically asking you about that, but Kirk in Toronto's written in, he says, Rod, I have to disagree with Eddie Steele that winning sells tickets in Toronto. Not here. Argos were 16-2 and not close to a sellout all season until the Eastern Final. Do you want to dip into that, what it would take? Because winning isn't everything for the Argos in Toronto.
No, but winning helps, right? As somebody who's sat in that building when they're not winning, you know, it's not better. Put it that way. Here's what I would say with the Argos crowd and momentum. And God knows, you know, we could do a whole show on the Argos in Toronto and the CFL, and I have a million thoughts on this kind of thing. But the weird thing with the Argos last year is they kind of screwed themselves in terms of getting better crowds in the second half of the season once they'd established themselves as such a good team, because they clinched like a week after Labor Day.
Too early.
And they had the back half of their schedule was loaded with home games. So, you know, the first 10 weeks, they're on the road like 6-7 weeks, and they come home at, you know, 10-1, you know, 11-1, and clinch. And then they got all these games in September and October that were essentially glorified exhibition games. And if you look at, you know, this is what I remember the whole controversy when Chad didn't play in Winnipeg and all that. Like, if I was the Argos, I'd be saying, holy smokes, we have to play Chad at all the home games, because we're already not giving our fans anything really that matters. So if we're going to sit Chad as well at home, we're not giving anybody a reason to come to the game. So I'll tell you, at the end of last year, you were certainly seeing Chad Kelly jerseys pop up all around that stadium, which you don't. Again, the most popular jersey at an Argo game usually is Pinball Clements, who last played in, a while ago. So, I think there was some momentum behind that Argo team and Chad Kelly. And I think you saw it with the 27,000. I mean, that was a legit 27,000. I took the GO train to that game. I got off in the GO train at the exhibition, and it was like I was back in the 80s. I mean, crowds of people. You couldn't walk, people in old Argo jerseys, people, having a few drinks outside of the stadium. The only difference with the 80s, there was a lot more marijuana in the air outside of the stadium, I got to say, than there was in the 80s. But my point is that it was a vibe that was unlike anything, I think, since the Argos have been at BMO. Maybe the opening night game at BMO, how many, 2015 or whatever. And that's why that crushing nature of that defeat was not just a loss for the Argos and an opportunity missed to be in the Grey Cup, an opportunity missed for us at TSN to splash Chad Kelly on SportsCenter for 7 straight nights, leading into that game. It was also a lot of people in that stadium that don't normally go to Argo games. And, what they saw was the worst football performance that team put out by a long shot. But I think, your caller is right. Your listener is right. Winning alone is not going to flip the switch in Toronto. No, there's a whole bunch of this market, unfortunately, that doesn't pay any attention to the Argonauts, doesn't know when they play, and doesn't even consider going to games, unfortunately.
Well, I'll tell you an interesting story. We were riding the bus with the Riders to the 2017 East Final, and all our guys were up against the glass like, what's all this? It was tailgating from actual Argo fans. And that game, ironically, Mike Babcock brought Mitch Marner to the game. Marner cheering for the Argos, Babs for the Riders. That was a great day. Went down to the last minute, as you know. So, Dave, they're there. The fans are there. And secondly, they're watching on TV too, aren't they? The ratings, they got to be good.
No, absolutely. And this is kind of the weird paradox of the kind of what I will say the next tier of sport teams in Toronto. Toronto FC does really well in attendance and not very well on television. The Argos do really well on television and not very well in attendance. My colleague and friend Steve Simmons wrote a brilliant column a couple of years ago where he basically said, the Argos have what TFC would love to have, and TFC has what the Argos would love to have. And given that they're under the same ownership, you figure you might be able to figure this one out. But it is an odd one. But the thing is, in this market, something as simple as the awareness of when the Argos are playing. Like I often say, if I ask my friends, when do the Argos play? When's their next game? The penetration level of that in this market with so much else going on is hard. And as somebody smarter than me once said, if my fans know when the game is, or if people know when the game is, I can't guarantee they're coming to the game. But if they don't know when it is, I guarantee they're not coming. And that's, I think, a reality of what we deal with in the Toronto market.
Steve Simmons is such a cynical SOB. You got to get him on TV again, man. I love it. And we've connected over the fact we both own homes in Boca Raton, so we're going to hook up down there. David, we're out of time. This is always good.
I was down at Simmons' place. I was doing the Sunday night game, Bills and Dolphins, the last regular season game of the year. I went down a day early.
And you know the hood. Yeah. It's a great place in the world. David, thanks. We'll be watching this weekend. Appreciate the time.
Hey, thanks so much, Rod. Always enjoy joining you. Thank you.